Hi there, it's Miracle, and it is that time of the year when we summarize all the books we read in 2018. But before I talk about the top books that I read in 2018, I want to take time and appreciate the books that taught me something new and opened my eyes wider. I did the 7 books open my eyes in 2017, so I'll do the same for 2018. Without further ado, let's dive into the books. The first book I got here is Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Renee Adlage. This book was a big thing at the beginning of this year, and its popularity has arisen. Renee Adlage is a feminist based in UK, but while she's having her voice as a feminist, she discovered that feminism cannot be discussed without breaking down racism and the power and classes differences. So this book is her way to try to have the conversation to people who admit or who do not admit that racism is hidden in every aspect of our lives. This book taught me that there's a problem when people say I don't see color, even when they're being friendly. Because denying the existence of the issue is denying the people who are struggling with them and dealing with them every day, hence is denying part of the existence of people. This does not only apply to racial problems, but also apply to a lot of other things as well. And also, one of the reasons make this book special is the UK perspectives. Because on the reading market, we see a lot of books that discussing the American racial problems, but rarely we see books discussing the history of racism and the racism situation in UK. And also, a personal takeout from this book is that I now understand that anger, when it expressed in a proper way, is not always a bad thing. And furthermore, I think this book is written in a very clear way and it's a book that's worth reread. The second book I got here is Feminism is for Everybody by Bell Hooks. Compared to the previous book, this book is a little bit more dry, but I think it's a super fit reading for me because I'm interested in feminism for a long time before I read this book, but I had never studied it systematically. And also, I appreciate there's a chapter talking about international feminism and the harm of during the Western colonization. Because growing up, Western colonization is something that I experienced and felt strongly. I feel like a lot of the judgment that Western people made about China was actually, although well researched, but a colonization version of the Western policy. Even for me, because I got influenced by the Western culture a lot, so sometimes I need to remind myself to not thinking of issues colonizedly. And again here, it is a thing that applies to not only feminism but also a lot of other things as well. And with the background of fast globalization, I think it is extremely important for us to recognize colonization and also be aware that each nation has its special culture and background. When we're thinking about the issue and trying to find a solution, we need to do it in a way that respects its unique background. So I can relate to a lot of the things that Bell Hooks talks about in the International Feminism chapter. Hence, one of my critiques for this book is that the International Feminism chapter is a little bit too short and not deep enough. And another critique from me is that this book is lack of the resources of the referencing. She referenced a lot of things, but she rarely gave the sources of those references. I think it's due to her wanting to make this book a simple guidebook for feminism concepts, but I do want to learn more about the referencings, and I think this book will be benefit more if she links some of the sources. But overall, I think it's a great introduction to a lot of the feminism concepts, maybe not the introductory level of introduction because it's too dry, but an intermediate level of introduction. And the third book I got here is Why God is a Woman by Ian Andrews. First of all, this book introduced me to prose poetry, which is a format that I'm not familiar with and I didn't really understand it before I read this book. But now I think prose poetry has the advantages of being a very good storyteller. And secondly, this book was talking about a boy who was born and raised in this female-dominated island, where boys are being judged and body-shamed and a lot of the things happened to them as a minority. It used such a simple reversed example to show us how many things that we accept every day and we normalized every day actually having problem. I think this is a brilliant idea, and for that reason, this book stayed with me long after I read it. Next, I have Missoula, Rape and the Justice System in a College Town, written by Jon Krakauer. This book opened my eyes in a very depressing way. Jon Krakauer is a profound nonfiction writer, so the research and the writing in the book was well-rounded. But the truth in this book hurt so much. It taught me that it is not only very difficult for the sexual assault survivors to recover, but sometimes it is also very difficult for them to prosecute their cases. When the survivors are trying to seek help from the justice system, they firstly will be hurt again because they need to prove the rape actually happened again and again. And also, they sometimes even been told to protect and not protect, to not ruin the rapist's life. To me, that was a very bizarre finding. Maybe it's due to the fact that I knew a little about the US justice system, or maybe I have this naive idea that the justice system is always protecting the victims. I liked how this book followed a couple of rape cases, but again, the whole book was a very depressing documentary. Following, I have In Order to Live by Yaomi Park. This book gives me all kind of emotions as we follow Yaomi's journey escaping from North Korea to she settled down in South Korea. And this is the first-hand material about the lives in North Korea since it's such a mysterious country, and also it shows us how cruel for people to survive there, let alone escape there. I still remember after I finished this book, I was left wordless. There's no phrases or sentences can describe how I felt at that moment. And I do not understand why anyone need to come across these difficulties in order to just survive. And because of that, I have my top respect for Yaomi as a young woman. And I also find the part where she settled down in South Korea and learned new things is very interesting. She was suddenly taught about the concept of brainwashing, critical thinking, and also a different version of history. And she applied the new knowledge to her new life immediately. She questioned that if her previous life was a version of brainwashing, how could she be sure that her new life was not another version of it? And when I was reading about this, I thought this girl was so smart and on point. I couldn't admire her more. Second to the last, I have The Poverty of Women, which is a name that I translated into English. It was a book that's written by the Japan NHK TV station, and in Chinese it's called 女性贫困, and in Japanese it's called this. I don't believe it has been translated into English yet, but I hope it will one day. This book is a result of an extremely male-dominated social structure when women can only find works that with lower pay and less benefit compared to men who has a larger opportunity to get hired with higher wages and better benefits. And being mothers can often add more pressure to women than men. And all of the things leads to the consequence where women has like unsustainable financial life. That lead to one of the solutions is for them to work in sexual industry, which lead to a even more unsustainable lifestyle. This book also shows that because of lacking of supporting system, there's a possibility that even you are a hard worker and working multiple jobs at one time, you can still cannot provide for yourselves. And not to mention, sometimes you inherit the poverty from your family if they are not healthy enough. A lot of the phenomena that this book described that I have knew by theory, but with the book interviewed a lot of different women, young and old, the theory came so true and so difficult to solve. And it also reminded me it's not those females who are in poverty has problem. The problem is from the root, and we need to do more about it. And it's not just about Japan. A lot of other countries are having the same issues as well. Following The Poverty of Women, I have The Broke Seniors, which is also a book written by the NHK TV station. And in Chinese, it's called 老后破产, and in Japanese, it's called this. And this is as the title suggested, this is a book focused on the seniors who's in a very bad financial condition, especially when they don't have family to support them. Theoretically, they will have pensions and savings to support their daily life, but it's actually not enough. Because one of the problems we are growing older is that you need more help from outside. Maybe you need to go to the doctors more often, or you need to hire somebody to help you with the daily quests. So in that situation, pensions and savings, if there's any, often cannot cover with the expenses. The Japanese government does offer some helps to the seniors financially, but oftentimes the seniors they do not know how to apply to them, and also the helps have a lot of limitation when you apply to them. One example is some of the seniors who has little savings and little pension, but they have a house, although the house have a very low market level. But when they're applying for help from the government, this low market level house will be considered as a financial advantages, so they cannot get the help that they needed. One result for the seniors is to sell their house, but that will lead to homeless and also not have enough money to cover their daily expenses. But the upside thing of this story is that now the Japanese government considers the very low market level small houses as a financial disadvantages. So the seniors don't need to sell their house and be homeless in order to get help. But there are more and more other issues comes up and without a good or a better solution. This book was very alarming because China now has a very quickly growing aging population without a healthy working population to support the social structure. So there are a lot of problems that we will be facing in the future and a lot of things that we need to learn from countries like Japan. And that's all the books that I want to talk about today. And please let me know if you have read any of them and what's your thoughts about them. And do you have any books that you felt opened your eyes in 2018? And do you have any recommendations for me to check out in the new year? And thanks a lot for watching. I hope you have a lovely day. Happy reading. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!